The National Desk, America's News Now.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and breaking news right now. Guilty on all counts in a first-of-its-kind criminal case against a former president. It took the jury just 2 days of deliberations to convict Donald Trump on 34 felony charges for falsifying business records and violating campaign finance laws in an attempt to hide a hush money payment to an adult film star. Trump briefly spoke to the media as he left the courtroom.
We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. We have a country that's in big trouble, but this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over.
And the Biden campaign's communications director releasing a statement just moments ago saying, quote, there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office. At the ballot box, convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. And let's get right to the National Desk's Atra El-Nashar, who's been following the very latest all day, or I should say for the last 2 days. Atra, Trump's team says they will appeal. How will that impact sentencing? What do we know right now?
Yeah, good evening, Amira. I just spoke to a former U.S. attorney about this, right? Because we've all been waiting for this moment, but what happens next? So the appeal will actually start, I'm told, after the sentencing. So July 11th, that sentencing should be the next thing that happens in this case, and then Trump's team can go ahead and start with their appeal process. Now, between now and July 11th, we are going to see a pre-sentence report be prepared by the probation office. And what that is going to include is background information about Donald Trump, just as any convicted felon would have their background information included in a pre-sentencing report. And also both sides, the prosecution and the defense, are going to have an opportunity now to tell the probation office what they think the sentencing should be. But ultimately, of course, this is now all up to the judge. The jury is done. They've been dismissed. Judge Juan Merchan now decides the fate of former President Trump, again, before the appeals process takes place. And that appeals process really could take years, I'm told.
And what have we heard the judge say in terms of him facing prison time? I heard something about him saying probation was the optimal route to go here. What do we know? Is prison time even possible?
It is certainly a possibility. The judge, again, has great discretion over whether he opts for jail time or if, like you said, he goes for probation, for fines, things like that. Each of the 34 counts carries a maximum sentence of 4 years. However, according to the former U.S. attorney I spoke to, there is a maximum, the maximum that he could be sentenced here is 20 years, despite the fact that each 30 of the 34 carries 4 years. They'd likely be served concurrently, again, if it gets to that point. But you know, it's really hard, I think, to find a legal expert who thinks prison time is actually likely for the former president. Remember, this crime ultimately was one of paperwork. It was not a violent crime, and it did happen 8 years ago. But there is certainly a risk that he could go to prison. And the prosecution also is going to make their case that the former president should be incarcerated. And something they're going to point to, Amira, is the fact that Trump has been very flagrant about violating his gag orders. So they're going to say to the judge, you see, he's willing to disregard the court's orders. This is why he should be incarcerated. But again, all that will be accounted for in the pre-sentencing report. And July 11th, 10 a.m. local time is when we'll hear the next step in this case.
Yeah, and all eyes will be on that July 11th date, that's for sure. Atra El-Nashar live in Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you. And we will continue to follow this all night long as the reactions come in. So stay with us both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. And right now, a line of storms threatening cities from New Orleans in Louisiana straight north to Minneapolis in Minnesota. In all, about 34 people are being impacted impacted by those storms today, and more severe weather is expected over parts of central Texas and Oklahoma tonight. The National Weather Service is warning of up to 70-mile-per-hour winds and hail in excess of 1.5 inches. These storms expected to continue throughout the night. So, of course, stay with us as we continue to learn more and bring you the updates just as soon as they come in. Boeing is planning a sweeping overhaul of its production process and safety systems. Executives presented a new roadmap to the Federal Aviation Administration today. The agency had requested this after 2 reviews in February found serious problems. Boeing and the FAA will meet weekly about their progress, and the FAA will conduct monthly reviews. The FAA is also investigating a near collision at Reagan National Airport that happened in D.C. yesterday. The agency said it's looking into how an American Airlines flight was cleared for takeoff while another plane was already cleared to land on a cross runway. Another near miss happened at this airport on April 18th. And a third person in the United States has contracted bird flu, according to the CDC today. A farmer at a dairy farm in Michigan was diagnosed with the disease after coming into contact with a sick cow. All of the workers at this Michigan farm are now being monitored for symptoms. The U.S. Agriculture Department says they know of at least 67 herds across 9 states that have been infected with the bird flu so far. And right now, Alabama is set to execute Jamie Ray Mills, convicted of murdering an elderly couple back in 2004. It's the first time the state will put someone to death since carrying out the country's first nitrogen gas execution in January. This one will be through lethal injection, which is still the primary method. Mills' lawyers have appealed to the Supreme Court, but time, of course, is running out. And 2 investigative journalism groups are suing the Wisconsin Justice Department to try to get it to release more information about law enforcement officers in the state. The groups had filed an open records request in November seeking information like names, birth dates, and disciplinary records. The Justice Department released some, but not all of it, to protect officers' privacy. The impact may not be known for decades, but the population of undocumented migrants living in the United States appears to have more than doubled in the last 3 years. Here's the National Desk's Christine Frizzell with a look at some changes that new reality could be bringing about.
Since the start of 2021, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reports that 9.6 million migrants have been encountered, with another 1.7 million estimated so-called gotaways, bringing the total to 11.3 million. 10.2 million were estimated to be living here at the end of 2020. Some blaming the shift in border policy by the Biden administration, which limits border agents' ability to patrol the border.
When they've been redeployed to do administrative work, processing work, because the new plan at the federal government of this administration is expedite immigration processing. When's the last time we talked about border security?
While President Biden did undo several executive orders put in place by the Trump administration, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas insists it's part of a global change in mass migration, but also admits plenty of people are taking advantage of an overwhelmed system.
The reality is that some people do indeed try to game the system. That does not speak to everyone whom we encounter, but there is an element of it, and we deal with it accordingly.
New indications that may include a new round of executive orders by President Biden, using an authority under the Immigration and Nationality Act to temporarily shut down the border if the numbers get too high. A policy laid out in the Senate border bill, which allowed for activation of the policy if during a period of 7 days, there is an average of 5,000 people who are encountered each day. Backers of the bill, which failed twice, accused Republicans of preventing the problem from getting fixed to help Donald Trump in November.
Donald Trump came out and said, don't do it. I don't want to give the current president a win, so he's playing politics with it instead of focus on what the needs are from our law enforcement at the border.
As far as those expected well, in a big win for First Amendment and Second Amendment advocates, the Supreme Court unanimously sided in favor of the NRA, overruling a lower court's decision. Today's ruling allows the NRA to sue a former New York State official for violating free speech rights. The NRA believes Department of Financial Services Superintendent Maria Vullo pressured insurance companies to blacklist the association following the Parkland school shooting. Vullo had called NRA-endorsed policies murder insurance. And this just in, an Idaho jury has found Chad Daybell guilty of murder in the 2019 deaths of his wife and two of his girlfriend's children. The case included bizarre claims of zombie children and apocalyptic predictions. Daybell's newest wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, was sentenced last year to life in prison without parole for her role in the killings. Now the jury will decide if Daybell should receive the death penalty. Coming up, the major change in the United States' approach to helping Ukraine in the war against Russia. Then internal Google documents have been leaked, and experts say they appear to contradict what Google says publicly. A closer look at what they reveal. And later, thieves continue to target Hyundais across the country. How police are working with the car company to help combat the problem. We'll be right back. In what could be a major policy change, President Joe Biden is giving Ukraine's military permission to use U.S.-supplied armaments to strike targets inside Russia as they defend the border city of Kharkiv. Today, the NATO Secretary General gave insight into why this change is necessary.
In the beginning, almost all the fighting took place on Ukrainian territory, deep into Ukrainian territory. But now, the last weeks and months, most of the heavy fighting has taken place actually along the border.
According to two U.S. officials who remain anonymous for security reasons, Ukraine still can't use the weapons for offensive purposes. And on the war front, the IDF says it has seized control of a strategic corridor that's running right along Gaza's border with Egypt. And it's known as the Philadelphia corridor that runs the entire length of the border. The Israeli military says it was necessary, claiming it has found 20 Hamas smuggling tunnels along the route that it wants to dismantle. Egypt, meantime, has denied the existence of such tunnels and has said it puts in jeopardy a decades-long peace treaty that it has with Israel. In recent days, Israel has gone further into the southern city of Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of displaced Gazans have been seeking shelter from fighting. It's also where intensifying violence has killed dozens of civilians, including 53 more in the last 24 hours, according to health authorities in Hamas-run Gaza. And it comes as the UN now reports the amount of humanitarian aid that's getting into Gaza has dropped by 67% since Israel's incursion into Rafah began on May 7th. And aid coming through the temporary floating pier constructed by the U.S. military off the coast, that remains stalled after a section was damaged due to bad weather. A Google document leak appears to shed light on how the tech giant decides what content you see and what content you don't, which has long been a claim of those who say Google employs unfair business practices. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has more.
It's one of the internet's greatest mysteries. How exactly does one get a website to the top of a Google search, or at least appear on the first page?
The algorithm is something that most companies hide. It's essentially their secret sauce.
A recent leak of internal company documents appears to, at least partially, lift the veil on how Google search ranks websites. Experts say some of the data in the documents appears to contradict what Google says publicly about how the engine works.
We've been lied to. The truth needs to come out.
For example, Google appears to factor in the number of clicks a page gets while ranking a website rather than how reputable a source is. Google has previously denied using this method. It's a method critics say helps spread disinformation. For decades, companies, news organizations, nonprofits, and politicians have spent millions, if not billions of dollars to master Google in order to get their message or product the most views.
I know companies that literally could live and die because margins are so razor thin based upon what page they are on.
Search engine optimization consultant Irfam Azimi obtained the 2,500 pages of documents and pushed to have them published, arguing the public deserves transparency from Google.
So webmasters and business owners can make better business decisions on optimizing for Google search.
We reached out to Google. The spokesperson sent us a statement saying we would caution against making inaccurate assumptions about search based on out of context, outdated, or incomplete information. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
560 million customers of Ticketmaster may have had their personal data stolen. The group, Shiny Hunters, is taking credit for a supposed hack and claim to have access to names, addresses, phone numbers, and some credit card details. They're offering a one-time sale of $500,000 for the information. The hack was first reported by Australia-based Cyber Daily. The Australian government says it is investigating these claims, and the FBI has offered to help. Ticketmaster hasn't commented on the possible hack just yet. Meanwhile, in Europe, the EU's justice and police agencies took down a major computer network with thousands of domain names behind ransomware attacks around the world. 4 high-value suspects were also arrested in the operation codenamed Endgame. Millions of people worldwide, including in the United States, were victims of the cybercrime ring. While Europol called it the biggest international police operation ever, they also say it won't be the last takedown we see. And more than 1 million portable bed rails are being recalled after 2 deaths were reported. The recall covers 2 models of Medline's Bed Assist Bar Adult portable bed rails. The U.S. Product Safety Commission says users can become trapped within the rail itself or between the rail and mattress, leading to suffocation. The 2 deaths were reported in 2019 and 2023. Anyone with these recalled items should stop using them immediately and contact Medline for a refund. Walmart is admitting that in March, at as many as 1,600 stores, the company listed wrong prices for some of its merchandise because of an internal system failure. Some prices were set too high, others were undervalued. The company did not disclose how many customers were impacted, what items were mispriced, or how long this problem has lasted, but a Walmart spokesperson told Bloomberg that more than 80% of overcharged customers received reimbursement, and those who were undercharged, well, they just got a bargain. The IRS free online tax filing will be available in all 50 states and the District of Columbia next year, and the service will now be a permanent feature. The Internal Revenue Service tested the online program in 12 states this tax season, and it's now expanding it across the country. Right now, only certain simple federal tax returns are eligible for this online filing, but Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she says they hope to expand who is eligible in the coming years. Seeing your dentist may be one of the healthiest steps you can take for the rest of your body. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains why.
Hey there, everybody. This report shows that while most of the germs in our mouths are harmless, if you don't have good dental care, those germs can lead to some serious health problems.
You doing okay?
It's all because your mouth is an entry point to the rest of your body, Dr. Robert Lucas says, of Ohio's oral surgery and dental implant specialist.
Many diseases are related to inflammation throughout the body. Anytime you have dental disease, then it can also form inflammation.
And inflammation has now been linked to heart disease, brain diseases such as Alzheimer's, even preterm birth and low birth weight babies.
So that's especially important for younger people who are contemplating whether or not to get their wisdom teeth out, to remove that as a source of problems in the future.
Dr. Lucas says in addition to concerns about wisdom teeth,
cavities are a source of inflammation, gum disease is a source of inflammation.
So in addition to good dental care, you can reduce inflammation risk by getting enough sleep, getting as little as 20 minutes of exercise a day, and eating a healthy diet with plenty of dark green leafy vegetables. It's also recommended you keep alcohol intake low, quit smoking if possible, keep your weight down, and trade a cup of coffee each day for green tea. All these help you mind your mouth and the germs that go beyond it.
If you notice some of these oral health problems, taking care of these right away, of course, the best option to prevent many of these complications. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you. And coming up, a California woman had to choose between buying groceries and protecting her property. How much home insurance rates have soared in the past few years? When we come back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
APD says there have been nearly 800 thefts of Hyundai and Kia vehicles so far this year, which accounts for 42% of vehicles stolen. Dave Vandelin is vice president of Hyundai Motor America. He says they're working to change that after viral social media videos from across the country exposed how easy it is to steal certain Hyundai vehicles.
So the customers have really been caught in the middle of this across the country.
What's your message to Austin owners and to anyone considering purchasing one of your vehicles in the future?
I'd say the message to the Hyundai customers that have a 2011 through 2021 Key Start vehicle is urgency to come see us at one of the clinic sites.
The average home insurance in California costs around $1,200 per year. And Heather Swan was telling me that it was almost like paying for a second mortgage with a fixed income.
Put food on the table or insure your home. That's the obvious. There's, not really much of a choice there.
Insurance rates for homes have been skyrocketing across the U.S. Between 2019 and 2024, home insurance rates increased 48.4%. That's why Heather Swan says she couldn't afford to have it anymore.
I believe it was 2019, we were paying a rate, and literally right now it's 10 times that amount.
Swan lives near Corscold and says that she stopped insuring her home a few years ago.
A giant show of support and football field-sized surprise for a woman battling cancer.
Doesn't surprise me, and she would be the first one out here organizing this for someone else.
Tammy Roy, a former Woonsocket High School teacher, recently made the choice to end her treatment and enter hospice, putting an end to more than a decade of her battle with the disease.
It was so inspiring and amazing to watch this journey of hers, and here we are coming again 10 years later.
Unable to lace her own dancing shoes, members of the community brought the dance floor to her front door Wednesday evening. Her street erupting in dance and music as friends, family, students, and teachers performed the well-rehearsed surprise routine.
And coming up, how much someone just paid for the priciest Beatles instrument ever sold at auction. We'll be right back. John Lennon's iconic guitar just became the most expensive Beatles instrument ever sold at auction. This piece of music history just went for $2.9 million at auction house Julien's. The famous 12-string acoustic guitar was used by both Lennon and George Harrison during recording sessions for the Beatles albums Help and Rubber Soul, and can be heard on several songs, including You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. After Lennon gifted it in 1965, it ultimately made its way to a music manager who tossed it into his attic and just forgot about it. It was presumed lost for more than 50 years before resurfacing. And what time is it on the moon? Scientists say it's urgent that we find out now. So far, scientists have found that a single day would be roughly 56 microseconds shorter on the moon than it is on Earth. Scientists say it could lead to significant inconsistencies over time, and they hope to create a new method of time tracking that accurately measures lunar time as it is by the end of 2026. That's the year the space agency plans to return astronauts to the moon for the first time in 5 decades. And that does it for this edition of the National Desk. Stay with us tonight as we have continuing coverage of the reactions to the historic conviction of a former president. Thank you so much for joining us.